Wow, 6 years already. I'm back with another video within that time frame. Perfect. This is going to be Villainous Daughter level 99. This is specifically going to be about the leveling system within the franchise from level 1, or as close as I can get, all the way to 99 and see what I can go get from there. This is going to be taking the anime, a little bit of the light novel, and a little bit of the web. Let's get started. So the beginning of our scaling starts with these people here. It will be somewhat useful, not everybody here, but this is where we get some of our scaling. So a noble level 10, and this is also in the light novel as well as the anime. And it shows that a level 10 can be thrown into the air quite a distance and quite the height from their sword fight. And this chart also assists with that information. I will actually be using that chart myself to some extent, regardless of the fact that there's no actual numbers on it. This also would assist us with judging how leveling and levels actually work. So our first little tidbit would be in volume 4, assessing the lower level people, would be showing us that a level 13 keeping up with a carriage jogging speed would be difficult, and it would show something much closer to level 20, which is where most soldiers from the Valshine Kingdom actually are at. Which means that most of these people are essentially a bunch of trained horses. Put that into perspective. Although we don't know what Gilbert's actual level is, we do know that it is more than 40 levels below Yumiella's, and Yumiella currently is above level 100. Although all that we can get from the level assessor ball thing that is in the anime, light novel, and web also would show only a 13, since this is past the evil god and Yumiella 2's actions. This is probably the first glimpse that we can actually see within the mid-tier of the actual systems, as we are shown, or we are specifically told, that a level 40, despite being so long ago, you don't really lose levels in this. It is more like you just gain them, and when you age, you still, get brittle. But in this, it does seem like being level 40 would still consider you at least a powerhouse within a country. And this does seem to be generally around that level of where 20 levels seems to be it's not too difficult to beat you, but it's going to be a struggle. Or should I say it's not impossible to beat you, but it'll be a struggle. So the first time that we actually get to hit levels 50 and up would actually uniquely be in the very beginning. And this would be the suit of armor that is a palace mage would struggle with to actually do anything against. And this is clearly around level 50 to 60, as 60 is considered where Adolf is. We see that after Yumiella throws up a black hole, just like in the light novel, just like in the anime and web. Adolf is around less than 40, but I mean 39 is like, right there. And this is before Yumiella 2 shows up, so clearly she doesn't actually possess anything above that. And despite being levels 60, 39 levels below Yumiella currently, he still can perceive her whenever she dodges. He still perceives whenever she is at the sword fighting tournament and she throws her fist. He sees that. He can perceive that. Granted, it was a blur for everybody else, let alone, or just nobody actually saw it besides him. So we could be talking about decades of skillful, honed abilities, and we are barely able to make out somebody who is 40 levels above us. Adolf acknowledges the fact that she is so far ahead of him and praises her. I believe this is also in the anime, but it's very short. In the manga, this is the web, but in the light novel, this is also very short. So, if we're going to look at this in a war scenario, Adolf is perfectly fine with standing in the front lines and basically just swinging his sword around because of his level. Patrick, interestingly enough, within the first and a half years of actually getting into the academy and meeting Yumiella, is able to just generate this, where he's able to make a stone structure and then decap it, or I should say have it. And within this, he actually does get a level confirmed at level 60, which is the same as the commander, or Adolf. So essentially at level 60, both Patrick and Adolf would be able to perceive Yumiella throwing this punch to shatter Will's blade, despite it being, her fist. I don't believe that the difference with the black holes were too big, but they were close enough to what actually happened. But this is what the light novel had. This is how the anime had it. The black hole that Yumiella summoned. And obviously the light novel simply just states it. And this is what the kingdom did have before the black hole actually was there, with amazing graphics, I will say. And this is the black hole that she threw up whenever it was during the swordsman competition. So clearly it's just a black hole. It's a perfect vacuum, takes apart your very atoms, or world lines if you really want to go with that. It rips you apart at a really fundamental level. It's really hard to describe how badly you're just screwed. The only thing that I could recall that would really do this, something similar to this, would be freezing somebody at absolute zero. Basically, you're just so fun. You're just so fundamentally gone, and you're so just vulnerable that it's just like it's really hard to put into perspective of how done you are. But yeah, that's that. And this is what the web novel gave us whenever it came to the black hole for Yumiela's within the first few episodes. So yeah. So because I don't actually have a PDF or a picture or proof of this, you're just gonna have to take my word for it, which is the best source, of course. So in the sixth novel, we do get the first king of Valshine and the demon king. Basically, we have a fight between them in Yumiela, and the first king was stated to be able to hit faster than sound, and he was around level 60 to 70 since he could fight the demon king, or basically just ward him off. He should be stronger than the demon king, and the demon king is somewhere around level 60 to 70, and this would put Patrick, Adolf, the demon king, and the first king of Valsham around the same tiers with their own advantages. The demon king should be the strongest. However, this is very debatable, as it's so vague that we don't really know, but because of how the magic system actually is, we could give him that. Alicia technically would be within this range as well. However, this is only anime, and nothing actually was suggested in the light novel. They simply state that she got stronger, but in the anime, she's already level 60. So clearly there was a conscious choice to change things, which is fine. I'm just stating it. So Alicia technically should be the strongest, but she's not even stronger than Adolf. And I believe that should be pretty much it. After the royal schooling that Yumiela and Patrick have done, in volume 2, he is level 80, which means he grinded a little bit more. And this is actually the first proofs of where exactly or how exactly magic really works in this world. And its genetics, specifically of how much and what type. This is not only backed up by Patrick, stating that despite being level 80, despite being so powerful, he could basically just uproot any kingdom he walks into with strength alone. He basically doesn't have enough magic to actually do it with, he doesn't have the magic to do it, but he can do it with physical strength, which is very interesting. And in the fourth novel, Adolf is stated to have very little to no magical abilities, and yet is considered the strongest in the kingdom. So essentially at level 60, Patrick would basically be able to at least outmaneuver around the head captain for Adolf. And when that way, before, and this would be at level 60, and at level 80, Patrick would basically be dunking on him, essentially. If they're both level 60, then Patrick has the advantage with maneuvering abilities and magic due to his having wind and earth, and Adolf having nothing. So, level 80 versus a level 60, Patrick would just slap him around. In Volume 3, Patrick holds back Yumiella, who is at level 99, for some time. And after this, he is considered exhausted, or at least it looks like he is exhausted. There was no fight. He was simply holding her still. So we do know that there is at least a good amount of a physical advantage when it comes to a 20 level difference. And seeing how Adolf and Patrick weren't helpless against the Demon King off of simply statements, it does seem like a 10 level difference does not automatically give you that big of an advantage, but simply 20 would be a little too much for most people, unless you are incredibly skilled, which Patrick is not necessarily stated to be, especially in physical abilities, despite him having Earth. In Volume 2, we are giving a Dullahan. A Dullahan is a being on a horse with no head. It is the headless horseman, essentially. And we are told that it would be a tricky fight for Patrick, who in this novel is level 80. And this would essentially put the Dullahan at above the Demon Lord, which is super cool to actually get somebody stronger than the Demon Lord. And it would be a death or a dark affinity being. So Patrick would have a hard time fighting it due to his disadvantages in the affinity column. And the Captain Adolf would likely also not win. I don't know if he would go down for good. I don't think he'd be game ended, but he is going to struggle, at least, if not completely be overwhelmed. In the second novel, we are given a few feats that don't really push anybody anywhere, as levels 99 and 80 aren't really given that big of a scope, but this is something that you can take. We don't know the specifics about this boulder. However, it did take some time for them to run out of town and then head back and then feel the vibration. So, take it for what you will. We do kind of understand this, but people, especially poor people that don't really have all that big of an advantage, especially people who are really low level, despite outnumbering Patrick, basically have nothing against him. Basically him kicking around a bunch of weeds. Despite Patrick being level 80 within the second volume, we do see him being more of a tactician, more of a leader. Even with Yumiella around, he still takes charge. This is shown in the second novel pretty consistently. So we can give him more leadership roles than frontline roles or support roles when it comes to firepower. We do see, despite having healing powers at level 99, she still does get a fair amount of abilities, regardless of how almost useless they are. And for beings that are within levels 10 or so, these beings have absolutely no hope of fighting her. Yumiella herself does seem to be smart when it comes to books, but obviously social and street is a little different. And if you are wondering whether or not the swordsmanship challenge or swordsmanship tournament was actually like what levels they were, this is basically all we have. And that probably is more realistic than just hypothetical. Ryu, I was not actually planning on talking about him because of the vagueness of his level and whether or not we can even give him a real level. But he seems to be more powerful than a level 80 Patrick, but we don't know where exactly that would put him. That might put him above the Delahan, but we don't know. And he was also stated to be creating sonic booms as well. So maybe around level 99. But like I said, we don't know. There's either a feeling, like an instinctual feeling around darkness that even normal people can feel, or it's Yumiella releasing her happiness and it feeling more than comfortable pressure around her. We have no idea what this is supposed to be. In the anime, it does seem to be lasers, which would be absolutely wild. However, I would refrain from using this specific feat for light speed or relativistic, despite lasers being light in the real world. Here it's more like it's very questionable. Even the maid is able to see it. So, we don't ever see her or hear her or read her about going into dungeons and farming either. So her being above level 5 would be far from unlikely. The fire breath, this would just seem to be black flame. The same flame that would destroy the suit of armor within the second episode or within the first few chapters of Villainess' daughter. So this isn't really anything that I can give her. But I will say, if this is a level 99 dragon and he's just breathing on her like that, there could be an argument for a certain immunity or a certain resistance to people within the same level of the same magical category. Like a water mage might not be able to drown a water mage very easily. Kind of like a dark flame not really working on her, Yumiella, regardless of Ryu's. It's just simply vaguely stated. Cute hat though. Totally would wear. despite the immaturity, we do see that there is an understanding of physics as well, and an understanding of how much one can take, especially to such a large degree. Despite it not necessarily going through another one's head, that they could simply stop. In the anime, she's actually lying down, and it's a lot less implied that she took it with her legs, and it's more like she fell just falling, like on her head or on her back, and making a very similar sized crater. Which, if you've ever seen Bleach, Ikaku had a very similar crater around him, and that was calculated to be around town level. Due to the amount of dirt gone, essentially. I mean, it's not even there. It's literally just smoke and a big hole. Which might even give her, you could argue, vaporization. Because she's clearly not heavy. Because she states in one of the volumes that she would love, and I believe volume 2, that she would love to be much heavier so she wouldn't be thrown around as much. And she could put more weight behind every punch. Despite how absurd that is for a level 99 character to do that. Though it does seem to be either controlled or basically more like stunts, as it's not every single time that she falls, she makes a crater. And in this instance, it's just her landing. So she might have managed it a lot better. Darkness isn't necessarily a sign of evil. It's just seen as bad. Kind of like tattoos on people's bodies. Or a firearm on people outside of the United States, of course. Lamb does seem to have a certain immunity despite being level 99, although this would not give him a physical advantage over Yumiella. It would simply be him more absorbing or simply nulling her attacks because of a certain law or authority, I guess you could say. Same thing with keep living, not necessarily in addition to strength or speed, but it's more or less an authority to hurt somebody much stronger than your actual level. Within the fourth novel, we are stated for Patrick to be level 99, and essentially on Yumiella's level, the second level 99 character that we know of, and basically he would strike fear into the Demon King and the First King's hearts because of his name, not necessarily his level, which I found pretty funny. This is a very odd statement, but seeing this is at least something that we can get out of it, sure, why not? This reminds me of the song Strong as 1,000 Men, or something similar to that. And it's a very epic song. But Patrick should have no problems with 1,000 men. And capturing him and making him a hostage is more, I would say, hypothetical than an actual, a possibility. But he doesn't have any regeneration to speak of, so possibly. Having a light affinity, which would be Yumiela's counter is not an absolute victory. This is probably the only real light speed, reaction speed, raw speed that you can really give the verse. Anything else would be just way too vague. But since the God of Light is light and she uses only light, you could argue it. Keep Living, the sword that killed the admin, is the Saintess, the original Saintess from 800 years ago. Her other two companions were the Demon King and the first king of Valsheim, the OGs. Within the verse, there does seem to be an instinctive fear or understanding of one's level, of where they are compared to anybody else. After Yumiela 2's end, Yumiela, the one telling the story, is told to be able to use more than level 99 amounts of energy. So this is literally all we kind of have for over 4 chapters now, or 4 volumes now. As past this is more of a, taking Yumiela out is more hypothetical. She goes into how using Black Hole is really hard. It's really hard to take out her entire magical, capacity because the faucet is too small. Despite now moving from a branch within the tree to the actual tree. So more like the trunk. So basically, it's really hard to say exactly where she stands whenever it comes to scaling. But this should be around there. I will say for Yumiela 2, it does seem to be more, she was able to outnumber everybody with monsters, but I'll still give her the win since she was confirmed to outdo Lamb and the God of Light, thanks to the God of Evil. That, for the majority of the part, is basically where the scaling ends. Speed, again, it's more questionable, but light speed is fine, especially for Yumiela 99 and past. Everything else, it's very questionable. Yumiela did fight the first king, but that's all we were given, a fight. His attacks did not hurt her, and she could keep up despite being disadvantaged. However, if there is going to be a 7th novel, I'll cover it as well when I can. And this basically puts her within the low multiversal ranges. And due to how the story explains it, she basically caps at a little bit over light. If you want to say Patrick was the one that did it, and then she literally, as he was trying to run away with something in her hands and she was occupied, grabbed him before he could actually make it out the room in the second novel. You could give her that, despite Patrick being level 80 in both circumstances with the God of Light and in the room of cookies. That's fine, but it's unquantifiable. Though you can basically give her the ability to open portals now that she is able to, now that she is part of the tree rather than the branches. And if you want, you can argue that an infinite multiverse of herself is basically helpless chickens, which would give her multi plus, but there's nothing else to really give her. Even with Keep Living, as Keep Living is more of a key than anything else. And that should be the scale for Yumiela. I was as detailed as I could be. And thank you for your time.